How's it going, Ducks fans? It is a mailbag episode, and we are live from Acrisure Arena at the Calder Cup Finals. You brought some questions. I will try to answer all of them on this special episode of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, and today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of being an NHL GM and managing your own hockey franchise? Well, now you can with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On NHL in the game store. Download the game at hockeygm.app or look for it in the app stores. Start your dynasty tonight. So I am joined, and I have to get this introduction right. I am joined by Emmy-award winner Tim O'Brien. I'll start off the mailbag by asking you a question.
Sure.
Emmy winner, congratulations. How'd you get to this point?
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for the kind words. It was for, I worked at the NBC affiliate here in Palm Springs, and it was as a news anchor for our Tropical Storm Hillary coverage last August, and the 30-minute special we put together, and it won. So
yeah,
here we are.
So congrats on that.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I thought that was just fantastic that you won that. I got to see that thing in person at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I can send it to you.
So I got a bunch of questions from the email, Twitter, X, texts. I've got a lot of questions. There was one in particular that I do want to ask your opinion on as well, because we got to let our listeners know you did spend some time in New York working with the Rangers.
Yep.
So there's a player that you are very familiar with, and I'm just going to
Current plays for the Ducks in the league
currently in the Ducks.
Okay.
I will let you read this one verbatim. Who's this from?
It is from Zachary Martin at One True Zach. Do you see Frank Vatrano staying next season?
He has 1 year left on his contract, making under $4 million. So that's a good value for that contract. Strome is making more than Vatrano.
Yeah. I think being a Ranger, I can say I'm a fan, right? Being a diehard Ranger fan, I loved Frank Vatrano. I think he was a great addition to 3 years ago. I hope you had spoken, you and I, he was going to come back maybe at the deadline this past season.
It didn't happen.
It didn't, and that would have been a good one. He's got a heck of a shot. He's got speed. He got a lot of power play time too when he was in New York in that playoff push. So he's a valuable asset, a veteran, and $4 million, huh? Or just under?
Under $4 million.
That's unbelievable. That's good value.
So do you think he returns? Do you think he's going to get dealt this offseason?
I guess it depends on where the Ducks are in the standings, what the needs of other teams are, what they can get out of them. Because I think you could still get. I think the main reason the Rangers didn't go get him is they wanted a number one first round pick for him, and I think that had some hesitation on general manager Chris Drury's part. But if they're the bottom of the division and you can get a first rounder for him and continue to build what the Ducks have going, then I guess you'd have to move them.
Yeah, and I guess that was a good trade on both sides because New York got a lot of good value out of that. Obviously, they had a terrific record this past season in New York. Any team would be lucky to have him.
Yeah, he's a good – all the positive around him was a good locker room guy, great guy to be around, fun. The energy is contagious, and, it talks his play speaks for itself on the ice.
So do you think he stays in Anaheim, or do you think he's going to want to go somewhere else?
I think as you get to a point in your career you want to win, get back to the playoffs, and hopefully, lift Lord Stanley. So I don't know how close or far the Ducks are to that. I think what they're building is the right track, right path. Yeah. But I'm sure he would, as he gets older, he's going to want to move on to a team sooner rather than later. So to answer your question, I would think they move him at some point. Yeah.
All right, fans. I'm inclined to think that I don't know if he stays.
Yeah.
For the reasons you said. And also, I think he's going to get more. The Ducks will have to pay a lot of money to keep him around. A lot of money. And I think some would be afraid that that's an overpay.
Off the top of your head, what were his numbers this year in
He
Anaheim?
was a 40 goal scorer for the Ducks this season.
That's unbelievable.
So I mean,
it's remarkable.
I mean, I'll actually pull up his stats
Okay.
right now because they were unbelievable while I looked that up. Well, you loved him in the power play, right?
Yeah.
What was something else you liked about Frank Vatrano, like his time in New York?
There's some grit to him for being a top 6 forward. He's not afraid to get in front and block a shot, get back, and he's a two-way player for sure.
He is.
And that's so valuable in this league.
And something that we're seeing less and less.
Yes.
So my mistake wasn't a 30-goal scorer. 37 goals, 60 points.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
37 by far a career high.
Yeah, for sure.
Where was that new? Well, I'm kidding.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, in 22 games, 8 goals for the Rangers 2 years ago. But yeah, 37 is a good number, and that's going to get you paid. So
Yeah.
and that might be, like you said, just under $4 million. You put up another 30-goal scoring year, and that number is going to go north of 5, 6 in that range. So
Would it be off track if I said possibly 6 to 7?
no,
If he has another 35-goal plus season.
I'll take him back.
Yeah, I know
Well,
you would.
we just dumped Barclay Goodrow's salary. So
Oh, that you know what?
Yeah.
That might be a part 2 to this question. There are some teams that are going to be dumping a lot of salary pretty soon.
Yeah.
Frank Vatrano is going to be a hot ticket.
Yeah, no
So,
doubt about it.
Sorry, Ducks fans. As much as you want to keep him around, I'm inclined to say that he's probably not going to stay.
That's a tough loss, but you've got to wish him well. That's the nature of the business.
Yeah, that's just me being completely honest. Let's take one from Luis Alberto Johansson, who asked a couple of questions. So there's actually a couple. Which one do you think I want to go with here? There's a couple good ones here.
I think set the record straight on that top one.
All right. Question: do you think that Coach Cronin is going to be allowed to choose his own assistant coaches? If so, should he choose someone he has worked with before when he was the head coach of the Colorado Eagles? Or someone in the NHL, AHL level? I think AHL coaches is the next generation of coaching for the NHL. There is some truth to that.
Yeah.
Not including Dallas Eakins.
What did Dallas do to you?
Let's not go there.
So answer me this. Cronin was hired at the beginning of the year, or was he hired?
Beginning of the year.
So did he not choose you always choose your own assistants.
He did not. He inherited assistants.
Wow. So he didn't make the change out of the gate.
No, he didn't.
Wow, that's interesting. You don't see that all the time.
So would you rather bring in your own guys from the past?
Yeah, for sure. I think you guys that you're comfortable with. I think here in the Valley, we might see some of the Firebirds coaches go with Dan on his way to Seattle. But
yeah,
I think
so
they want to choose.
Do you want to come in too? I'm actually recording a mailbag episode right now.
Slide out, let him slide in. All right.
You're good?
Yeah, I got to go over there at 11.
All right. Once again,
Appreciate
Emmy Award winner Tim O'Brien.
Thank you.
And joining the I'm actually doing one. Dylan Travers from Emerald City Hockey.
Yeah.
So I'm actually doing a Locked On Ducks podcast.
Okay.
And actually, you know what? You've covered AHL in the past, right?
A little bit.
A little bit. So I'll actually ask you the same question because there was a really interesting one. Anaheim Ducks just hired a new coach last season. In your opinion, should you be able to choose your own assistant coaches or recycle someone that's already been in the NHL level?
Yeah. I think ideally you want the head coach to choose their assistant coaches. You want them to build out a staff kind of in their image, so to speak. I think that's the direction that I would go personally. That's the way I kind of lean. The exception being goalie coaches.
Yes.
I think if you have an established goalie coach that's already working with your goalies, you want to keep that continuity. You don't want to upset the apple cart unless it needs to be. But I think for the other assistants, I think I'm in favor of them bringing in their own people.
You know, goalie coaches very, very vastly get underappreciated and get very much overlooked. Like, we don't think about goalie coaches in those roles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Ducks have had issues with assistant coaches. They got rid of both of them. So now Greg Cronin, who you're familiar with, he was here with Colorado Eagles last season.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of a gritty coach. He likes those players that get into the dirty areas.
Yeah.
He loves those two-way players.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to think that he's going to go after assistant coaches that are kind of his ilk. There's plenty of talent in the AHL that could fill those roles, right?
Yeah, no, there really is. Because Seattle had a vacancy with their head coaching position. We looked particularly at a lot of AHL coaches that would maybe be good for something like that. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, off the top of my head, Carl Taylor from Milwaukee, I think, deserves to kind of to be moved up somewhere. I think he's somebody that likes that style of hockey.
He does.
Could maybe get in there and help out in that way.
We saw it in the last series, Firebirds Admirals. Oh God, that'd be a good assistant coach.
I think at
least explore that option, right?
Right. Yes, I would really look at some of the more successful AHL coaches, see if they want to take that next step up. Yes, you're not a head coach anymore, but you're at the NHL level. You're getting the experience there. We know how much NHL general managers like to kind of draw from that very limited pool of NHL experienced people. So sometimes that's your best way in.
But I hate recycling coaches.
I do too. But this is a way of like kind of getting some fresh faces in there where they then might get into the rotation, so to speak.
So, you know what? I'm going to get this over with. So if you want to stick around for another segment, because I got a lot of questions here. So we got to do this and I'll answer some more questions on the other side. Now, hey, Locked On Ducks fans, I want to take a moment and bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be an NHL GM, especially right now, managing your hockey franchise. And you think you could run the Ducks better than the current GM? I don't know. Well, your dream can come true. You can find out. And this game is most definitely for you. Manage every aspect of your team. Play through the seasons and lead it to the glory of maybe a Stanley Cup. Who knows? Hire the right coaches and staff. This is your chance. Trade players or draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging, realistic game. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So, by the way, Locked On Network listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. Download the game. Just visit hockeygm.app or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Well, I've got a couple more questions. Actually, I got a lot of questions. I've only answered 2 questions so far.
Come on,
only
man.
2.
Come on, pick it up.
So actually, another one is also having to do with Greg Cronin. Should he change his coaching system for next season? And I mean, every time when they dump and chase the puck and press the forecheck, they seem to lose the puck battles. Thank you for saying this. Are you a fan of dump and chase?
I'm never a fan of dump and chase, particularly at the NHL level, where right now we're seeing. I mean, look at the Stanley Cup final. Look at the final 4 teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. Look at all the successful teams from the last couple years. I mean, one of the things they're all doing is they're attacking in transition. They have a plan coming through transition. You look at the huge difference between Vancouver prior to Rick Tocchet and then now under Rick Tocchet. It's because they have a plan of attack through transition. When they enter the offensive zone, every player on the ice knows where they should go. If they're the third guy in the zone, I go here. If I'm the second guy, I go over here, so that they can try to make skill plays at speed, because that's really where the NHL is going right now. We've been hearing that forever, but I think we're actually there now. And I think that the Ducks have a lot of skilled players, a lot of young skilled players, and it would make sense for them to kind of start leaning in that direction.
They need to, because I feel like dump and chase with the young core that the Ducks have right now does not work. You need to build momentum in the neutral zone. You need to build momentum, especially on the defensive end, trying to get to that spot. So I think about guys like Travers, obviously, but also you cannot discount the speed of Leo Carlson, who I know you like, by the way.
I love Leo Carlson, and some of the stuff he did in Europe would totally lend itself to this. The way he could play through the middle there, we already saw it from him in his impressive rookie season last year, right? He was so solid. Mason McTavish. Like, again, I think back to that, like, kind of weird pushed off until August World Juniors, where it was like him and Bedard kind of playing together, but how skilled he was leading Team Canada. And particularly on the rush, he could just dictate everything. He was the field general out there, the ice general, if you will.
Yes, he was
out there on the ice. And so I think you got to put guys like that in a position to really maximize what they have, particularly a guy like McTavish. He's been around for a couple seasons,
years now.
You know, he's acclimated to the NHL. You can start pushing in that direction. And look, you've got Cutter Gauthier now, right? He can come in heavy on the forecheck, but you know what? He's also a really skilled player. You get it to him.
Well, he also has good power.
He does.
We do not talk about that aspect of his game enough. Is that does lend itself to a new kind of modified F3 system, or a modified, have the rush through the neutral zone, the newer style. That benefits those kind of players.
Yeah, particularly because space is always hard to come by at the NHL level. So when you are entering the zone, right, and when you're entering the offensive zone, you need somebody who can come through and clear out space, take bodies, take those defensemen, and kind of then make space for the more skilled guys to come in. That's something Calder Gauthier can do. But you also need somebody who's going to be able to fight through sticks, fight through bodies, and get their stick on the ice, be ready for a pass coming into the slot, right, and get that puck on net. And we know Calder Gauthier can do that. And the Ducks have some great passers too.
They do. That they don't utilize.
Yes.
So I got a couple here from Tom Houghton. So
Okay.
shout out to Tom for giving me a couple of questions here. I'll answer this one first. Macklin Celebrini versus Leo Carlsson. Who do you take? I have an answer for this, so I'm going to go first. I am taking Leo Carlsson all the way. Leo Carlsson would have been the first pick this year. Most other years, he would have been a number one pick.
I agree with that.
If not for Connor Bedard being a franchise changer in last year's draft, Leo Carlsson would have been number one. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
So would you take Carlsson or Celebrini?
It's really close because I think I don't know. Like,
okay.
They're both so different in a lot of ways too.
They're
So
very
it's
different.
what you kind of value as a team. I feel like I personally would take Leo Carlsson.
I think Leo Carlsson has a higher ceiling. When I think about,
he has a higher hockey IQ.
Yes, he does. I actually heard from one of my buddies who works elsewhere. He said that Macklin Celebrini, maybe the ceiling. You ready for this? The ceiling is middle six.
Whoa!
And
I don't know that I go that far.
Yes, I actually heard this. And the player comparison that I heard a couple of times, I don't know if I like this one. Joe Pavelski as a comparison to Macklin Celebrini, I don't think I like that one too much. But I think the ceiling for Leo Carlsson, because of his IQ, is higher. He's a bigger body player.
Yeah.
I think he has better hands than
Yes.
Celebrini personally. And when you think about someone that I think has a more well-rounded game right now, I think I go with Carlsson.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leo Carlsson is a more creative player.
Creative is a good word.
And I think that is something that it's hard to define. It's, it doesn't always show up when in each and every game, but boy, when it shows up, do players like that make a difference for you? And I think that's what Leo Carlsson really has edgewise over Macklin Celebrini. Macklin Celebrini is one of the most technically perfect players I've ever seen. Like, you could tell that he grew up having access to like all of the skill coaches anyone could ever hope for. He does everything technically perfect. His skating, his stick handling, all of that stuff is technically perfect. But he kind of
But you can only take that so far.
Right, exactly. And he can play to a system, but once the system kind of breaks down, a lot of his effectiveness kind of goes out of the game, where I feel like Leo Carlsson is really good at coming in if things are breaking down and taking advantage of what he's got.
And I will say, you know who that used to remind me of? Not so much anymore. Troy Terry used to be a very systematic player, still kind of tends to do that at times, the way you describe it.
Yes.
And this is not to badmouth Troy Terry at all, because Troy Terry took a couple of years to get going, but he had to break out of that systematic role. And what I mean by that is he kind of had to get used to playing a certain style. He had to get used to playing NHL hockey, where he would get in his spots.
Yes.
He would go from one dot to the other. And especially his first two seasons, now that I'm recalling that, is he would have the same shot over and over and over again, or he would work in the same scheme over and over again.
Right.
But that was also GM Bob Murray hockey, which we don't talk about a whole lot. That's a name that we don't like to mention too much around here.
Yeah.
But that's what it reminds me of. It's a very stagnant system.
It is.
Especially Dallas Eakins. Some of his schemes were very stagnant. The power plays looked the exact same. You remember Dallas Eakins systems from last season or 2 years ago. And Ducks fans, I know you complain about this, and I had complaints about this. There was hardly any movement on the power plays. There was like no fiber in the power plays, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was.
It was bad.
And so now with kind of the opportunity to be more freewheeling, again, who they get as their assistant coaches, they have to consider that as well.
Yeah, and it's really like with Troy Terry specifically, it's learning that at the NHL level, when you see space, you got to take space.
Yep.
And when you have that half second where you can get a clean shot off, particularly a player like Troy Terry, who has, top 10-ish shot in the NHL that he's really perfected, you have to just take it. Doesn't matter if you're in the spot you want, it's the spot you've got, and you've got to let it rip.
And I
feel like that's
and I
what
complained about that a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot.
I believe
was
you. I believe you.
take, I'm going to say it, Take the damn shot. That's what I complained about a lot. The shot is there. Take it.
Yes, for sure.
I
Got
like
one more.
this mailbag question. I'll
Uh-huh.
let you read that one.
What if Demidov or Levshonov are both available at 3, or would you take someone else? No, I wouldn't take anybody else. If one of those two is on the board for the Ducks at 3, you're taking whichever one the Blackhawks leave you. The choice between the two, personally, right now, I would lean Ivan Demidov.
So would I. If he's available, which I don't know if he is.
I don't think he will be, personally.
So you have Demidov at 2.
I have Demidov at 2 and then Levshonov at 3, which kind of gives the Ducks that like really solid future anchor defenseman that they'd be able to rely on. You know, come playoff time, he can play 30 minutes if you need him to. I think he'd be a good complementary piece to a lot of the other good defenders, or rather, a lot of the other good defensive prospects the Ducks already have would be good complementary pieces to him.
But the Ducks also need a right-handed defenseman right now.
Yeah,
they
do.
have plenty of left-handed defensemen. They
do.
have some good skilled left Ds. A right D for them would be perfect.
I know, but I just think, I think he's good. He's so good. He's better than the alternatives enough that you go for it and you worry about those issues later. I am of the mindset you bring in the best players and things will figure itself out. You make a trade then down the road or something.
So I have to do an ad read and one more question, but Dylan, thanks for coming in. It's good seeing you again.
Yes.
And safe travels back.
Thank you.
Oh, man.
Keep up the great work here.
Thank you.
In both places.
I know. I'm busy all over the place.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right. So thanks for coming on. I have one more question I'm going to answer. So I'm going to get to that on the other side. And now a brief word from eBay Motors. That is right. Passion, drive, and patience. Patience underlined. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Excluding supply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back. Yeah. I got one more question I'm going to answer here. I did not get to all of them. I am sorry. The ones on YouTube, I'm going to actually answer tonight or tomorrow. I'll answer them on there. One more question because I got to get out of here, and I want to avoid what happened to me the last time I was here. So I just like this one, and this is kind of like on a personal level. So I do want to answer this because I've gotten this a couple times. Hello, my name is Rene Ramirez. I know you've been covering hockey for a while. That's true. But I am curious. How did you get into hockey? Was covering sports always something you wanted to do? Thank you for the work you do. Thank you so much for the kind words. Okay, first, how did I get into hockey? Considering that I grew up in Southern California, and I'll just say what I'm going to say. I am a Latino in Southern California, and most Latinos that live in Southern California don't play hockey. Even roller hockey, ice hockey. Like, there's not many Mexicans that get into ice hockey. Most of them get into soccer or baseball or basketball. So how I got into it actually was all the way back in 1992-93 when the Los Angeles Kings made their run to the Stanley Cup Final against the Montreal Canadiens. That's when you had Luc Robitaille, Marty McSorley, Rudy, Wayne Gretzky as an LA King. And that run as a kid, that got me going. And that was where I said, you know, I could see myself liking watching hockey. And also at the same time, the Mighty Ducks film came out. I thought it was so cool. And then when the Ducks got their team in 94-95, I said, hey, these jerseys are kind of badass. I like these. This is so cool. Then D2 came out, then D3, which I won't talk about, but it was super cool and it looked awesome. The Mighty Duck logo. You know how many kids in my neighborhood just all of a sudden, oh, the Mighty Ducks logo is so badass. We love it. And when I wanted to play, I was like, I got to be Paul Kariya. or I want to be Andy effing McDonald, or I want to be like that bruising kind of guy. We loved it. That was peak 90s roller hockey. By the way, remember okay, I'm going to like age myself here. Remember beach hockey back in the late 90s, early 2000s? You know how effing cool that was to see beach hockey? You wouldn't get that in the Midwest. No, you wouldn't. So that's kind of how I got into it. And the second part of that question was covering sports always something you wanted to do? Honestly, yeah. I actually wanted to be an announcer at first. I loved Bob Miller, one of my favorite all-time hockey announcers for the Los Angeles Kings, was terrific. Rick Jeanneret for the Buffalo Sabres, always one of my favorites. And even going back to basketball, Chick Hearn, one of my heroes who did it for the Lakers. And the great Vin Scully for the Dodgers, even though baseball is a vastly different sport. And by the way, I have actually done baseball before as well. So it was trying to emulate those guys that I've always wanted to maybe not cover sports, but at least work in sports in some capacity. And it was a dream of mine to do that. I actually started working in hockey 14 years ago with the Ontario Reign. It was that long ago in the ECHL. And I've steadily worked my way up. And when I was offered the job here in Coachella Valley, I had to take it. I couldn't pass it up. And now this is like a dream job, one of the best jobs that I've ever had. And, you know, I'll be a little bit just like on a personal note here without choking up. I'm working with some of the best staff in the American Hockey League. Like, it's a team effort. Everyone that works here is so wonderful, and it makes my job easier. So shout out to all those guys as well. All right. Last one that I got asked like 3 times. Are you planning on going to the NHL draft next weekend? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. If certain things don't happen, the plan is to be in Las Vegas next weekend. Crossing my fingers for that, for the NHL draft. Thank you for asking all those questions. Thanks once again to Emmy-award winner, Tim O'Brien. So I'm going to actually yell it. Tim, thanks a lot, buddy. And also to Dylan from Emerald City Hockey. That's what this pin is, by the way. So shout out to ECH. Shout out to Dylan for coming on. And you could keep asking your questions. We'll do another mailbag soon. lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com, or you could send me messages on Twitter X @StimpyJD, or the show's Twitter X @LO_Ducks. Show's available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., etc., etc. Email, once again, lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. And once again, thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. And folks, this is the last time I'll be doing this podcast from Acrisure Arena for the season. So it's been a pleasure. But we have draft coverage next week, so stay tuned for that. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez saying have a great rest of the weekend. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Tim. Where's my logo at? I need to get that closing logo. Thanks, buddy.